The bathroom door swung open without warning, and there stood Jake, my roommate of 2 years, his eyes locking onto mine as I stood there completely exposed under the hot spray of the shower. "Alex, I didn't know you were in here," he said, his voice cracking. But instead of turning around and leaving like any normal guy would, he stepped inside and closed the door softly behind him, the steam swirling around us both. I froze, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "Jake, what the hell? Get out!" I grabbed the towel from the rack, wrapping it around my waist as quickly as I could, water still dripping from my hair. But he didn't move. His face was flushed, not just from the heat, but something else, something I couldn't quite place. We had shared this apartment in Chicago for 2 years, splitting rent on a third-floor walk-up in Logan Square, laughing over cheap beers after long days at work, and never once had anything like this happen. Jake was the straight-laced guy, the one with stories about college girlfriends and weekend hikes with his buddies from the suburbs. At least, that's what I had always believed. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes at first. "I need to talk to you, man. It's been eating me up inside for months. Seeing you like this it made me realize I can't keep pretending anymore." "Pretending what?" I asked, my voice shaky as I stepped out of the shower, the tile cold under my feet. The bathroom felt too small, the air thick with tension and the scent of my body wash. Jake leaned against the sink, his work shirt still buttoned from his shift at the tech firm downtown. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days, and for the first time, I noticed the dark circles under his eyes that no amount of coffee could hide. Jake took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "That I'm straight. That I don't feel things for you that I shouldn't. Alex, I'm gay, and I've been in love with you since the day we moved in together." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Me, the guy who dated girls through high school in small-town Ohio, who never questioned his sexuality once in his life. But as I looked at him, really looked, something clicked. The way he always made sure I was okay after bad days at the design studio, the late-night talks that went deeper than with any other friend, the quiet way he'd cook extra pasta on nights I worked late. Was this the moment everything changed? We sat on the edge of the tub, the shower still running to mask our voices from the thin walls of our old Chicago building. Jake poured out his heart, telling me about the nights he lay awake in his room across the hall, fighting the feelings, the guilt that came with every casual touch or shared laugh. He talked about his conservative family back in Indiana, the church youth group that taught him to hide, the fear that admitting this would shatter the life he had built. I listened, stunned, but not repulsed. Instead, a warmth spread through me that I couldn't explain, a quiet recognition that maybe I'd been feeling something too, buried so deep I never named it. By the time the water ran cold, we had talked for over an hour. "I don't know what this means for me," I admitted finally, my towel still clutched tight, "but I don't want you to leave. Let's figure this out together." Jake nodded, relief washing over his face like the steam that still lingered. That night, we ordered pizza from the place down the block and talked more, the conversation flowing like it never had before. We didn't touch, didn't cross any lines, but the air between us felt different, charged with possibility and terror all at once. The next morning, the awkwardness hit like a wave. I woke to the smell of coffee brewing in our tiny kitchen, the kind Jake always made strong the way I liked it. He was already dressed for work, scrolling through his phone at the counter, but when I walked in, he looked up with a small, careful smile. "Morning. Sleep okay?" His voice was casual, but his eyes held the weight of everything we had said the night before. I nodded, pouring myself a mug, the steam rising between us like a fragile barrier. "Yeah, you." We danced around the subject at first, talking about the weather, the upcoming Bears game, the leaky faucet in the bathroom that we kept meaning to fix. But underneath every word was the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. Work that day felt surreal. At the graphic design firm in the Loop, I stared at my screen, sketching logos for a new client, but my mind kept drifting back to Jake's confession. I thought about my own life, the girls I had dated, the way I had always fit the mold my parents expected. My dad, a retired mechanic in Ohio, still asked every Sunday call if I had met a nice girl yet. My mom sent care packages with homemade cookies and church bulletins. How could I even begin to explain this to them? The thought made my stomach twist. Yet when Jake texted me at lunch, just a simple, "You good?" I felt a smile tug at my lips. I replied instantly, "Yeah, you." And that small exchange felt like the first real step into unknown territory. By evening, we were back in the apartment, the city lights twinkling through the living room window. Jake cooked stir-fry, something simple, and we ate on the couch watching a documentary neither of us really followed. "I'm scared too," he said quietly during a commercial break, setting his plate aside. "I don't expect anything from you, Alex. If you want to pretend last night never happened, I'll understand." His honesty hit me hard. I shook my head. "I don't want to pretend. I need time to figure out what I'm feeling." He nodded, and for the first time since the shower, we sat closer, shoulders almost touching, the silence comfortable rather than heavy. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our friendship through a new lens. The pieces fit in a way I had never allowed myself to see. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel scripted, it felt alive. The days that followed blurred into a careful dance of discovery. We kept our routines, gym on Tuesdays, laundry on Saturdays, but everything carried new meaning. A shared glance over morning coffee, a lingering conversation about childhood memories. The way Jake's laugh made the apartment feel warmer. I started noticing little things, how his hand brushed mine when passing the remote, the way he remembered I liked my eggs scrambled soft. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was slow, deliberate, built on years of trust. One Friday night, after a long week, we stayed up talking until dawn about everything and nothing. His fear of disappointing his parents, my quiet doubts about the life I had been living on autopilot. I always thought love was supposed to be simple, I told him as the sky lightened outside. But maybe it's not supposed to be easy. Maybe it's supposed to make you grow. Jake smiled softly, and in that moment, I felt the first crack in the wall I had built around my heart. Yet even as we grew closer, the world outside pressed in. At work, my colleague Marcus asked why I seemed distracted, joking about a new girlfriend. I laughed it off, but inside the lie burned. Jake's sister called from Indiana, reminding him about the family reunion next month, and I watched his face tighten as he promised to bring a friend. The weight of secrecy settled over us like Chicago's winter fog. Still, in the quiet hours at home, we found safety in each other. No grand declarations, just honest talks and shared silences that said more than words ever could. The shower incident had cracked open a door neither of us expected, and now we were stepping through it together, one careful conversation at a time. Little did I know how many more doors and storms lay ahead. The next morning, as I poured coffee in our small kitchen overlooking the bustling streets of Chicago, Jake walked in wearing the faded Northwestern hoodie he always slept in. "Hey," he said softly, grabbing his own mug. The word hung between us, simple yet loaded with everything we had unpacked the night before. I handed him the cream without being asked, our fingers brushing for a second longer than necessary. Neither of us pulled away. "Sleep okay?" I asked, echoing his question from yesterday. He nodded, but his eyes told a different story. Restless, hopeful, terrified. We stood there in the morning light, two guys who had shared rent and bad takeout for years, suddenly navigating a territory neither of us had a map for. Work dragged that day. At the design studio, I stared at mock-ups for a local brewery campaign, colors blurring as my mind replayed Jake's words from the bathroom. I thought about my last relationship with Sarah back in college. Easy, expected, comfortable. We had broken up because it just didn't feel right, but I never questioned why. Now the why stared me in the face every time Jake's name lit up my phone with a simple check-in text. By lunch, I found myself in the break room, scrolling through old photos of us on a road trip last summer. In every shot, Jake stood a little closer, his smile a little brighter when he looked at me. How had I missed it? The realization settled in my chest like a quiet truth I could no longer ignore. That evening we cooked together for the first time in weeks. Nothing fancy, just pasta and sauce from a jar. Jake chopped vegetables while I stirred, the radio playing low in the background. "You know, my mom called earlier," he said casually, but his knife paused mid-slice. "She wanted me home for Thanksgiving. Asked if I was bringing anyone." I glanced at him, seeing the tension in his shoulders. What did you say? He shrugged, told her maybe, didn't specify. The unsaid hung heavy. I set the spoon down and turned to face him. Jake, if this is too much, if you need space. He shook his head before I could finish. I don't need space. I need honesty. With you, with myself. We finished dinner in comfortable silence, then settled on the couch to watch a basketball game. Halfway through, his hand rested on the cushion between us. I covered it with mine. No words, just warmth. It felt right in a way nothing else ever had. The weekend brought our first real test. We decided to go for a hike at Starved Rock, a 2-hour drive outside the city. The trails were crisp with early fall leaves, the air clean and sharp. As we walked side by side, Jake opened up about growing up in a small Indiana town where being different meant whispers and sideways glances. I tried dating girls to fit in, he admitted as we reached the overlook, but it always felt like acting. I listened, sharing my own stories of pressure from my Ohio family. Sunday dinners when my dad grilled me about settling down with a wife and kids. I never let myself wonder if there was another way. I confessed. The wind whipped around us, carrying away years of unspoken weight. On the drive home, we stopped for ice cream, laughing over silly childhood memories. And for a few hours, the world outside our bubble didn't exist. Monday brought reality crashing back. At work, my boss announced a big client pitch requiring late nights. Jake had a deadline at his firm, too. We texted throughout the day, small updates that kept us connected. But when I got home at 10, exhausted, Jake was waiting with takeout and a playlist of our favorite songs from college. Figured you might need this, he said. We ate in silence at first, then talked about the future, not plans but fears. What if I'm wrong about all this? I asked quietly. Jake met my eyes. Then we figured out, together. No pressure. His patience gave me room to breathe. That night we fell asleep on the couch, his head on my shoulder, the TV flickering softly. It wasn't dramatic romance. It was real, steady, and exactly what I needed. As October turned to November, our bond deepened through small rituals. Morning coffee became our time to check in emotionally. Evening walks around the neighborhood let us talk without walls. I started noticing how Jake's presence calmed the noise in my head, the constant worry about what my parents would think, what my colleagues might say if they knew. One night, after a particularly tough day at the studio, where a homophobic joke from a coworker left me silent, I came home and broke down. Jake didn't offer advice right away. He just sat with me, hand on my back, letting me feel it all. You don't have to be strong every second, he whispered. In that moment, I realized love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up. Yet doubts crept in during quiet moments. Was I gay, bisexual, or just confused because Jake was safe and familiar? I researched late at night, reading stories online that mirrored mine, but nothing fully captured the whirlwind inside. Jake sensed it and never pushed. Take all the time you need, he'd say. His understanding only made me care more. Thanksgiving loomed, and with it the decision about family visits. Jake's parents expected him home alone. Mine texted daily about flights to Ohio. We hadn't told anyone, and the secrecy started to feel like a weight. Still, in our apartment, we built something beautiful. Honest conversations, shared laughter, the kind of closeness that comes from true vulnerability. The shower incident had been the spark, but these weeks were the slow burn that was changing us both from the inside out. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to look for them. Christmas lights twinkled along Milwaukee Avenue as Jake and I walked home from the corner market, bags of groceries swinging between us. The city felt alive with holiday energy, but inside our apartment, the atmosphere grew heavier with every passing day. Thanksgiving had come and gone with separate trips home. Me to Ohio for awkward family dinners where my mom hinted at grandkids. Jake to Indiana, where his dad grilled him about settling down with a good woman. We had texted constantly, sharing the lies we told to keep the peace, and when we reunited at the airport it felt like coming home to something real. Yet the cracks were showing. At work the tension mounted when my colleague Marcus invited the team to his holiday party. Bring a date, Alex, he said with a wink. I laughed it off, but later in the break room I overheard him joking with another designer about guys who never bring girls around. The words stung more than they should have. That night, I told Jake over dinner, and his face darkened. "You don't owe them your truth," he said, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. His own office had started a diversity initiative, and while he wanted to speak up, fear held him back. "What if they look at me different?" he admitted. We stayed up late talking about the double life we were living, out to each other, hidden from everyone else. The conversation brought us closer, but it also highlighted how fragile our bubble was. The first real conflict hit the week before Christmas. Jake's sister posted family photos on social media, tagging him in pictures from Thanksgiving and asking why he hadn't brought that roommate you're always talking about. The comments section filled with questions. Jake paced the living room, phone in hand. "She suspects something. My mom called today, asking if everything was okay with us." I tried to reassure him, suggesting we could say we were just close friends, but the words tasted wrong. "I hate lying to them," he said, voice cracking, "but I'm not ready to lose them either." We argued, not loudly, but with the quiet intensity of two people who cared too much. I accused him of pushing too fast. He accused me of hiding behind fear. By midnight, we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence thick. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "This is new for both of us." He nodded, and we met in the middle for the first real hug since the shower, tight, wordless, full of everything we couldn't yet name. The holidays brought more tests. I flew to Ohio alone, enduring my dad's questions about dating and my mom's not-so-subtle setup with the neighbor's daughter. Every text from Jake was a lifeline. Funny memes, updates about his family's church service where the pastor preached against modern lifestyles. When I returned, exhausted and guilty, Jake picked me up at O'Hare with a small wrapped gift. Inside was a simple keychain engraved with our apartment address. "For the home we're building," he said softly. The gesture melted the last of my defenses. That night we decorated our tiny tree together, laughing over tangled lights, and for a few hours the outside world disappeared. But societal pressure didn't let up. A mutual friend from college, Tyler, came to town for New Year's and crashed on our couch. He noticed the way we finished each other's sentences, the comfortable silences. "You two are like an old married couple," he joked over beers. Jake froze. I forced a laugh. Later, when Tyler left, Jake turned to me. "How long can we keep this up?" The question lingered. We spent New Year's Eve on the rooftop of our building, watching fireworks over the skyline, and as the clock struck midnight, Jake took my hand. "Whatever happens, I'm in this with you." The kiss that followed, soft, tentative, full of promise, was our first. No fireworks, no drama, just two men choosing each other in the cold Chicago night. January brought work deadlines and family calls that tested our resolve. Jake's dad announced a surprise visit to Chicago for a conference. "He wants to see the apartment," Jake told me, panic in his voice. We spent a frantic weekend making the place look normal, hiding shared photos, buying a fake girlfriend scarf to leave on the chair. The visit went okay on the surface. Handshakes, sports talk, dinner at a steakhouse. But Mr. Miller's questions about my dating life felt like probes. "You boys seem awfully close," he remarked once. Jake changed the subject smoothly, but afterward he was quiet for days. I almost told him, he confessed one night. But the look in his eyes stopped me. I held him through the guilt, realizing our love story wasn't just about us. It was about fighting for the right to exist openly. Through it all, our emotional connection grew stronger. We started therapy separately, me to unpack my identity questions, Jake to process family expectations. The sessions helped, giving us language for feelings we had buried. One evening after my appointment, I came home and found Jake cooking my favorite meal. "Progress?" he asked. I nodded, pulling him into a hug. "Yeah, I think I'm starting to accept that this is who I am." The words felt freeing. As winter turned to spring, the conflicts with family and society chipped away at us. But each misunderstanding, each late-night talk, each small sacrifice brought us closer. The man who had walked in on my shower had become my anchor, and I was becoming his. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, I believed we could face whatever came next. Spring arrived in Chicago with sudden warmth that melted the last snowbanks along the sidewalks. Jake and I fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Morning runs along the lakefront, weekend brunches at our favorite cafe, quiet evenings planning small trips. But the cracks from family pressure widened when Jake's father called again, insisting on another visit. This time he brought Jake's mother. The four of us sat in our living room, polite conversation masking the tension. "You boys have a nice setup here," Mrs. Miller said, her eyes scanning the space a little too carefully. When she asked about my social life, I felt Jake tense beside me. The weekend passed with 4 smiles and separate sleeping arrangements we invented on the spot. After they left, Jake broke down in a way I had never seen. "They suspect. Dad kept asking why I never bring girls home." I held him as he cried, the weight of his conservative upbringing crashing down. "I can't keep hurting them like this," he whispered. For the first time, the idea of distance entered our conversations. Work added another layer of strain. My boss assigned me to a team project with Marcus, the same colleague whose jokes had made me uncomfortable before. One afternoon in the conference room, Marcus cornered me. "You and Jake seem pretty tight. Anything going on there?" His tone was light, but the question felt like a trap. I denied it quickly, but the lie sat heavy. That night, I told Jake, and he suggested we cool things publicly for a while. "Just until things settle," he said. The suggestion stung. We argued, my fear of losing what we had built clashing with his fear of family rejection. "I'm not ashamed of us," I said, voice rising for the first time. "But I'm scared too." We didn't speak for 2 days, the apartment feeling colder than any Chicago winter. Misunderstandings piled up, missed texts interpreted as distance, a canceled dinner scene as doubt. The emotional toll showed in sleepless nights and quiet meals. The betrayal came without warning. Tyler, the college friend who had visited at New Year's, posted a group photo from our rooftop on social media with a caption that read, "Chicago boys living their best lives." Nothing explicit, but someone from Jake's hometown recognized us and messaged his sister. The call came at midnight. Jake's sister was crying on the line, asking if the rumors were true. "Mom and Dad are devastated," she said. Jake hung up, face pale. They know. The next morning his phone buzzed nonstop, texts from family demanding explanations, accusing him of hiding, of lying. I watched him pace, torn between defending us and the guilt of breaking their hearts. "Maybe I should go home for a bit," he said quietly. The words fell like a knife. "To figure things out." I nodded, numb, even as my chest tightened. He packed a bag that afternoon, promising it was temporary. The door closed behind him, and the apartment echoed with emptiness. Alone for the first time in months, I confronted my own crisis. Nights blurred into days of questioning everything. Was I strong enough for this? Did I even deserve the happiness we had found? I called my parents, testing the waters with vague stories about someone special, but their responses were cautious, traditional. Work suffered. Marcus noticed my distraction and pulled me aside. "Whatever's going on, fix it. The client pitch is next week." The pressure mounted from every direction. I spent evenings walking the empty streets, replaying every conversation, every sacrifice. Jake texted daily, updates from Indiana, his parents' cold silence, his own doubts. "I miss you," he wrote one night, "but I don't know if I can do this to them." The distance stretched our bond thin, misunderstandings growing through delayed replies and misinterpreted words. One call ended in tears when he said maybe we had rushed everything. I hung up feeling utterly alone. Yet in the lowest moments, clarity emerged. Therapy sessions became my lifeline, helping me name the fear as internalized shame rather than truth. I started journaling, writing letters to Jake I never sent, pouring out the growth I had experienced because of him. Friends at work noticed the change and offered quiet support when I finally confided in one trusted colleague. "You deserve to be happy," she said simply. The words planted a seed. After 2 weeks apart, Jake called late one night. I told him the truth, not everything, but that I'm figuring myself out. They're hurt, but they didn't disown me. Relief flooded me. "Come home," I said. He booked a flight for the next day. The reunion at the airport was quiet, just a long hug in the arrivals hall. No grand speeches, just the understanding that we had both sacrificed and survived. The crisis had tested us, exposing wounds we didn't know we carried, but it also forged something stronger, a commitment to face the world together, no matter the cost. Summer heat blanketed Chicago as Jake and I tried to rebuild what the family visit had cracked. Mornings started with coffee on the fire escape, conversations careful at first, then gradually deeper. "I'm sorry I left," he said one humid dawn. I panicked. I forgave him instantly, but the scar remained, a reminder that external forces could still pull us apart. Work stabilized after the successful client pitch, but Marcus's lingering questions made office life tense. I kept my personal life private, yet the secrecy now felt like a choice rather than a cage. Jake's family communication thawed slightly. His mother sent a neutral birthday card, but his father's silence spoke volumes. We navigated the emotional minefield with weekly therapy check-ins, learning to communicate without accusations. The real low point arrived in July when Tyler, the friend who had inadvertently sparked the leak, reached out again. He wanted to visit Chicago for a music festival. We agreed, hoping for normalcy, but during dinner Tyler pressed for details. "You two seem different. Closer. What's the deal?" Jake froze. I deflected, but later that night Tyler cornered me in the kitchen. "Dude, if there's something going on, you can tell me. I'm not judging." His words sounded supportive, but the next day, a mutual college group chat exploded with screenshots of old photos and speculation. Someone had connected the dots. Jake's phone lit up with messages from Indiana relatives demanding confirmation. The betrayal cut deep, not from Tyler directly, but from the ripple effect of loose talk. "I thought he was safe," Jake whispered, voice breaking as we sat on the couch amid the storm of notifications. The misunderstanding escalated when Jake accused me of not shutting Tyler down firmly enough. I countered that he had been the one to invite him. Words flew, old insecurities resurfacing like ghosts. For 3 days we barely spoke, sleeping in separate rooms, the apartment thick with unresolved pain. The separation that followed was my idea this time. "Maybe we both need space to decide what we really want," I said, packing a bag for a friend's couch. Jake didn't argue, his eyes hollow. The week apart felt endless. I spent days walking the lakefront, replaying every high and low, the shower door, the first hug, the family crisis, the betrayal. Doubts flooded in. Was our love worth the constant fight against society, family, even our own fears? Therapy helped me see the pattern. Each crisis forced growth, but only if we chose it. Jake texted once, "I'm lost without you." I replied with a single word, "Same." The reflection time clarified everything. This wasn't just romance. It was two men choosing to become better versions of themselves together. When I returned home, Jake was waiting with dinner and a letter he had written during the separation. "I choose us," it read simply. We talked for hours, tears mixing with laughter as we unpacked every hurt, every sacrifice. The misunderstanding dissolved in honest dialogue. "I was scared of losing you to the world's judgment," he admitted. "But losing you to fear is worse." We emerged stronger, deciding to take small steps toward openness, telling one trusted friend each, attending a local LGBTQ support group together under the radar. The growth was palpable. I no longer flinched at casual questions about dating. Jake started setting boundaries with his family without guilt. Summer faded into fall, and with it the last remnants of doubt. The man who had once walked in on my shower had become my partner in every sense, emotionally, spiritually, completely. The journey had demanded everything, but it had given us something unbreakable. Fall leaves carpeted the sidewalks of Logan Square as Jake and I carried boxes up the stairs to our new apartment a few blocks away, a slightly bigger place with a rooftop deck overlooking the city. The move symbolized more than change of address. It marked the end of hiding and the beginning of living openly on our own terms. After months of careful conversations with family, Jake's parents had agreed to a video call where we shared the truth together. Tears flowed on both sides, but his mother's quiet, "We love you," opened a door we thought was sealed shut. My own parents in Ohio took longer, but a weekend visit filled with honest stories and home-cooked meals softened their resistance. "As long as you're happy," my dad said gruffly, shaking Jake's hand for the first time. The acceptance wasn't perfect, but it was real, hard-won through patience, sacrifice, and the courage to keep showing up. Work reflected the shift too. I came out to my team during casual lunch, and while a few reactions were awkward, the overwhelming support surprised me. Marcus even apologized for past jokes, admitting his own growth. Jake's office celebrated his quiet authenticity with new ally programs. The external battles that once threatened to break us now felt like chapters we had survived. Internally, the identity struggles that had defined our early months gave way to quiet confidence. We still argued sometimes about whose turn to cook or how to handle holidays, but the misunderstandings no longer carried the weight of fear. Each conflict became an opportunity to choose each other again. On our first night in the new place, we stood on the rooftop under a clear October sky, the city lights stretching endlessly below. Jake slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. "Remember the shower?" he asked with a soft laugh. "Best mistake I ever made." I smiled, leaning into him, the warmth of his presence chasing away the last shadows of doubt. The journey had taken us through shock, confusion, family rifts, betrayal, separation, and finally peace. We had grown, not just as partners, but as men who refused to let the world dictate our worth. The romantic moment felt earned, simple and profound. Two American guys who had found home in each other against all odds. As we watched the sunset paint the skyline gold, I realized the greatest gift wasn't the happy ending itself, but the strength we had built to reach it. Life would still bring challenges, holidays with family, societal stares, everyday stresses, but we faced them together, hands linked, hearts open. The man I had once only known as a roommate had become my everything, and I had become his. In a quiet after the storm, love had proven stronger than fear. True or false? A single vulnerable moment can rewrite the entire story of two lives if both are willing to face the truth together.